Welcome to the Diversity Connector podcast, where we explore the rich tapestry of human experiences. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the country on which we meet today. I would also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging, and together as we dive into conversations that bridge cultures, challenge stereotypes, and celebrate the unique perspectives each of us brings to the table. Each episode is a journey through stories and insights from a kaleidoscope of voices, each sharing their colorful narrative. Whether you're at home, on the go, or just anywhere in between, you're now part of a community that values understanding, inclusivity, and the beauty of diversity. So plug in your headphones, get comfortable, and let's connect through the power of our shared stories. Welcome, and thank you for joining us on the Diversity Connector podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Diversity Connector. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating young woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Thank you, Gertrude. So my name is Anastasia Lee, or Anastasia Lee. Um, I am based in Nam or Melbourne, and on the unceded land of the Bunurong and Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. So I guess for me, intersectionality has always been big because not only I am a woman of trans experience, but I am also a woman of color experience. I spent about 16 years of my life in Vietnam, where I came from, and then 18 years here in Australia. Now I live here. So that there's that bit of it where I need to sort of consolidate the two worlds and the two culture that constantly at conflicting with each other. And then I also have a forcibly displaced background as a former asylum seeker, then to refugee. So I work in social services, even though I have a bachelor degree in food science and nutrition, or now called nutrition science and food technology at Deakin University, Burwood campus. Um, so for me, I love cooking. If you follow me on my social media, Instagram or LinkedIn, you would see posts of food and cooking here and there. I love to meet people, and especially I've realized that everything I've been doing, it's all about the things that really bring me the most joy is to connect people with each other and really, building bridges and help them meeting the gaps within servicing system as well within the within the social justice system. So that's really like that's me as a whole. um Now with my work, so I do have quite a few things going on. I love writing, so I've been working on my own little cookbooks, but I have to say I've been sidetracked here and there, as it's summer and there are so many things going on, and with everything going on globally, there are more significant and there's more pressing calls to heal the communities and the world in a sense for me. What else? So on my during my days off, which I hardly do, you could see me teaching cooking, sharing my recipes, and talking to some people at the community center. You would see me like organizing things like Christmas orphans picnic event, helping out, hosting party and hosting gatherings for people. I really just enjoy sitting down together with people, coming up with ideas on how we can bring people together. How can we, just sort of put aside our differences and really see the humanity in everybody. Um, yeah, and another thing that I've been very fascinated about lately, is about gender politics and how we need to decolonize gender to to better equality, equity, for everybody essentially. Intersectionality is quite crucial because I, for me, when I do these community engagement, community development, and these projects, thankfully to my traumatic past, I just do not think about things as an LGBTIQA plus person. I think things from from a woman's lens, from a refugee's lens, and from a person of color lens. And I think the world would be better if we focus on intersectionality and we understand that everybody is struggling, um, the way that everybody is at the moment, especially during this time, when we have recovered from a pandemic and there are just so many conflicts still in the world. Um, Also, and for me, it's quite hard, right? It can be quite challenging to establish empathy, especially simply because it's you have the media saying to you one thing, or every certain media outlet would have certain agenda and propaganda even. And for quite some times, I think the Western world especially has been quite hardwired to think about, what about me? What do I get from it? How I can make benefit from it? And so it can be quite a challenge for anybody these days to think beyond themselves and start to have empathy. Establishing empathy, we might be able to have a bit of sympathy for other people, but I think empathy these days is something that the world really lacks. And gratefully, we do have young leaders and emerging youth sort of embody the empathetic goddesses and deities that they are. And yeah, it's crucial work, I think, especially when it comes to inclusion and diversity. I always say diversity is just the beginning. Diversity is where you start to get all of these voices, where you get all of these perspectives, that you may have never heard of. Um, equity and access is they are truly the essence of inclusion. Um, because at the end of the day, equality means what? You give people the same kind of access, but equity means that you actually focus on the person, really adjusting your policies, making your organizational structure, your service delivery model to really center about them. And it's for the past 10 years, businesses and organizations can see the benefit of being um, being diverse, right? And so the more equitable you are within your internal processes, be it HR, be it workforce culture, the more you're going to attract different people with different talents, and again improve your diversity portfolio. So it's to me it's crucial to talk about equity and making sure that um and another thing, so for me, inclusion is a must. Like people just keep thinking, oh, the world is so woke, especially when they think about inclusion. But the thing is, we have practiced inclusion for quite some times. we do have vegans options these days on the supermarket shelves. We have dairy-free products. We have non-allergens containing products out there for cosmetics. All of those things are acts of inclusion. And being inclusive doesn't mean that you're missing out on anything. Just as, if a meat eater eating vegan, it doesn't mean that they can't go back to eating meat. They have more options out there for them. So, yeah, it's essential, it's imperative to start focusing on equity and access to then improve and your diversity portfolio. Those are some of the things I can talk about for now.
Yeah. Anastasia, it sounds like you have been on quite a journey in your life.
Yeah,
You've had such a diverse range of experiences,
yeah,
from being a refugee, a person of color, a woman, a trans woman.
yeah.
All of this makes you a real rich cocktail of experiences. So, how has your personal experience of intersectionality shaped your approach in community development and inclusion?
So I try to really cater. So for example, I can say things from example, and when I create an event or when I gather the community together, I think about safety. I think so because everybody, especially the marginalized voices, the ones that we always want to uplift, they tend
Yes.
to be the victim of the system, right? Of the system. And they tend to be the ones who are constantly abused
Mm,
and exploited even. So safety and then for me, then I understand then with my intersectional experience, I'm like, okay, safety means public safety. How can
yes.
that space be safe for women, be safe for LGBTIQA plus? How can that place be welcoming to a person who may not speak English well? So
Mhm.
those aspects, and then how can that place provide emotional safety for a person? So that's how so I used to cry, well, not cry because I don't have any tears left, but I used to blame my intersectionality until I realized that actually my intersectionality is such a strength. They have never been a barrier. So
Mm,
because and the barriers are are systemic,
yes.
bureaucratic, right? So
Uh,
with that in mind, then I try to do my very best to make sure that whatever I create, be it a project, be it an event, it does not create or repeat those barriers to people who attend the event. I'm more
mhm.
than happy to deal with those, but making it more accessible to people. So then,
Yes.
yeah,
I love
yeah,
that. That
mm,
whole accessibility piece is absolutely crucial. Just before we started, you
mm,
commented on the fact that our podcast goes out as video and audio, which
mm,
is really important to include people with visual impairments. These are things that you don't think about unless you
mm,
are personally challenged
yeah,
with a disability that can stop you from enjoying life to the full.
yeah,
So, in implementing empathy,
mm,
you mentioned a focus on applied empathy.
yeah,
Can you describe how you integrate this into your work to create more inclusive environments?
yeah. So I work in social services focusing around disability, and therefore, again, accessibilities are very important to me. Now, with
Mhm,
applied empathy, it's quite interesting, right? Because many people, especially I can say that people who have been challenged, very challenged in their lives, they can
mhm,
feel so much. They go beyond sympathy. They establish empathy. However, sometimes, as healers, that's what I would call myself and others within this work, and or like yourself,
mhm,
we might, because we listen to so much, we exert a lot of those emotional energy out, we may get swallowed by it, and then we do not act upon it. We forgot that we are there to also provide maybe some input and some solution.
Yes.
So to me, it's important that you exert your empathy, you understand their struggle. And I say understand because I can never say that I know your experience. I can
Mm.
only understand how you feel and then take a step back and say, okay, this is what I did. Like this how I overcame these particular barriers. What can I
Yes.
do to then help this person to overcome their own barriers? So, that to me that is applied empathy.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, because empathy is futile if we do not come up with something to address the issues, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
Mm,
as an inspirational speaker, what
yeah.
key messages do you aim to convey to your audience about equity and inclusion?
So everybody struggles in their own ways. Just and at the same time, I do have acknowledged that due to systemic social and financial barriers, or even geopolitical barriers out there,
Mm.
some might be more disadvantaged than the others.
Yeah.
So it's important to understand that. So acknowledge your privilege. Even for myself, I always acknowledge my privilege. I have the privilege of aging, which again, many women of my kind do not get to live up to the age of, above 30s or 60s. So that's my
Mm.
own privilege. I also have the privilege of having a platform, even like this. So think about, yes, you may feel like you're at the bottom, but you also
Mm.
have your privilege. And remember, where whichever path you're standing on, or platform you're standing on, it's built by another person. So I think
Yeah.
that's the best way to then start thinking about equity and inclusion, because by understanding, by acknowledging that there's always somebody on a lower crown or lower level than you then
You.
can start thinking about lifting them up and
Hmm.
start including them in everything.
Yeah, that's very, very important.
Yeah.
So, how do you work towards empowering and supporting marginalized communities in your community work, minorities in your community work?
So again, I work because for me, thankfully, I do work for a mainstream organization.
Mm-hmm.
So it means that I have more access to bigger connection, bigger
Yes.
but bigger financial resources. And so so these days, I want to create events where I introduce these big stakeholders of mine to smaller
Mm-hmm.
organization, and understanding how community engagement and business partnership works, by gathering people together, showcasing them their own strength to my own network. Hopefully then
Yes.
they can start collaborate with each other and exchange resources, because at
Yeah.
the end of the day, wars happen because some people just want to hog resources and steal from
Mm.
others. So peace is created when we actually work collaboratively,
Yeah.
acknowledging our strength, whether we are small or big, and just work together. So that's how I actually start to incorporate that into my community engagement work.
Collaboration is a superpower, and most marginalized communities need to realize that that is really where our strength lies,
Yep,
that the power is in the numbers when we get together and we work together and we share resources.
yep. So
I absolutely love that.
that yeah, it's just one of the things that I've noticed in Australia. I mean, there's a term called lateral violence where minorities fight each other for resources, but at
Yes.
the same time, being like ourselves, being women of color, there's also we acknowledge systemic racism, and
Yeah.
that's another issue that we need to address as well to better collaborate with each other.
Yes. Yeah. No, definitely. So, can you share an example of how you've used festivals or program planning to promote understanding and inclusivity?
All right. Um, I created workshops. And of course, and then recently in July, this July, I hosted a Rainbow Fair community, a Rainbow community fair day, sorry, community fair day. And essentially it was to introduce organizations, be it LGBTIQA plus mainstream, or
Mhm.
just mainstream service providers and different government departments together into this same space. Now, another thing that I have to say that whatever I do, as I have said earlier, I make sure that the venue is accessible. I make sure that there's
Yes.
always a space for sensory, like a sensory space and chill out space for people with neurodiversity and for
Yes.
people to rest. I always ensure that there's also counselors on site to provide mental and emotional safety for everybody, and I make sure that everybody is well fed and well hydrated. And so with that, I then brought in different organizations, such as um, an organization specifically focusing on addressing domestic and intimate violence amongst trans women, or services such as peer support for queer refugees, because they are so much smaller and there's not enough data. Like, well, it's systemic barriers. There's no data for us to get fundings for them. So by introducing them to my business partners, these corporations and mainstream service providers, then
Hmm.
hopefully these smaller organizations, then they can get extra support, professional support from these places.
Yes.
And at the same time, when these bigger places, and I have to say, the bigger the place, the more likely they are ran by white people.
Yes.
So it means that they get to open their eyes a bit more and understand
Yes.
that, well, there you go. Like the stats you've been asking for is right there standing in front of you. You just haven't done
Yes.
enough to get them. So yeah, so those are the examples that I can give you. And I just love to bring people together like that.
You're very meticulous in making sure that you've covered all of the bases by the sound of it.
Yeah.
It's just incredible the level of detail that you go to. So, what strategies do you find most effective in influencing change and fostering understanding amongst more advantaged groups?
I think reverse psychology. I think reverse psychology is one of the best tools to really impact understanding. For my public speaking, is for especially, and when it comes to pronouns and the use of pronouns,
Hmm.
as much as I want to talk about like how pronouns is inclusive for trans people, but in these days, as Australia has grown multicultural, I then talk about how so many languages in the world use non-gendered pronouns. Yoruban, Turkish, Tagalog, these particular languages, they never had pronouns before until colonizers. So then
Yes.
by incorporating, so I try not to make it trans and gender diverse specific. I try to make it
Hmm.
more from a multicultural lens because then people can understand better. And as you know, as I have said, like work, in this particular society in the Western world, we can be quite pigeonholed with our vision and with our
Yes.
understanding. So the more information that I can share with people, the more benefits that I can show them that this one act can do. I think the more effective it can be. Um,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that's a really good strategy because then people aren't just going to block you off,
mm,
if they think it's geared at one particular sect of diversity as well,
yeah,
correct?
yeah, exactly. So it's
Yeah.
just about helping them to relate to that human aspects of themselves. And I used to have to do comedy, And my skit was about my struggle going to the bathroom because the bathroom issues were so big at the time for trans people. So I just talk about I too struggle in the bathroom, and and it really broke the ice as well. So yeah, so
I
it's
love
it's
that. You
about
use
yeah,
humor as well,
yeah.
and
So
just
humor is fun.
lighten things up so it's not too heavy and too serious. I love that.
Mm. And I think just being
So,
open because
mm,
I'm an open book. I understand because for me, I guess with my journey, there's no such thing as privacy because as a person of multiple different intersectionality, I have to always speak louder and I have to always be quite different just so that my voice could be heard. So yeah,
yeah.
so I'm very open about everything.
So, what does receiving the Lifetime Award mean to you in the context of your advocacy work?
I mean, I didn't expect to receive that at all. Um, it's for me today. I just had some reflection and it reminds me that I've achieved a lot. I still don't feel like I've done anything for the communities out there, but apparently I have. So I think it's childhood trauma and it's cultural trauma where my parents always told me that I was never enough, and it doesn't matter how many A pluses I got, I was still not enough, and so that award there really helps me just to as a reminder to myself, but at the same time I think it does open opportunities for me work wise, as I have said before, being a woman of trans and color experience, I feel
Yeah.
like I have to work like 200% harder just to
Yes.
even get the attention that needed. Yeah, so it's just that. And it does help. So having that award really helps, providing me this
Yeah.
platform and get my attention.
It is an uphill struggle. So,
Yep.
what are some of the biggest challenges that you faced in your advocacy, and how have you addressed them?
So the biggest one would be people of minorities. To me, they
Mm,
still they still haven't healed enough. So a lot of the time it's all about me, me, me. You know, um,
yes.
it's all about themselves. It's all about their trauma, and I think that is one big challenge that I have when it comes to advocacy work is that
Hmm.
people get so deep within their trauma that they just cannot see the way out.
Yeah.
And like these days, and also like bureaucracy. I think bureaucracy and politics within the workplace, it's really another layer of
Hmm.
challenges to a lot of advocacy work out there. Um, so what I the only so with the community work, I try my best to build this network. So when somebody approach me or when I have a session with a specific community, I then can refer them to this service or that service and
Yes.
really explain to them and remind them again of their privilege. Because for me, I came from a place where I had no access to healthcare, I had no access to, WorkSafe or anything like that. I have no
Mhm.
access to stable housing, and so I remind people of the privileges that they still can have with them and the things that they can do. When it comes
Yeah.
to bureaucracy, I guess I will always, for me, it's all about finding your allies, finding the support, and keep pushing. And I know it's going to be I understand would be very daunting, but you just have to keep on repeating yourself, repeat yourself, because when you are tired of saying the same thing over and over, they are also tired of hearing the same thing over and over, and then they will get things done. So there's that. Yep.
Oh my gosh. That
So
is
resilience,
challenging.
persistence. Yep.
You have to be so resilient. So, looking forward, what are your goals for furthering community inclusion and intersectionality?
So one of my immediate goal right now is to help people who have been incarcerated getting access to employment. um,
Okay.
because housing is such a mess at the moment. So as the moment they get out of jails, as the sooner we can help them getting a job, the less likely they would fall back into crime and further, and fall into that endless loop of mental health and poor health and well-being overall. Another thing
Mhm.
I want to address is also building platform for people who are running away from domestic violence situation,
Mhm.
and people within forcibly displaced status, so refugees and asylum seekers, getting
Right.
access to employment again, simply because, to me, I think we have been focused a lot on mental health, but having stable income, having stable home, and even being able to buy yourself something you want once in a while is a
Mm.
significant part of mental health.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and and, and I think like we haven't emphasized on that enough. So yeah. So those are my goals for now. My immediate goal within the next 3 years.
Yes.
But also I look forward to create platform, like stepping in, do the dirty work, build
Mm.
something up, and then start getting people who have never got the chance to speak up, get them to come in, share their journey, and just keep on building and keep on building. So yeah.
I love that. Wow. My last question for you is what advice would you give to those looking to make a difference in their communities, particularly in terms of promoting equity and inclusion?
So I guess it's uh so many, but I guess first of all, leadership is not about hogging or keeping in the same position. To me, a sustainable and effective leadership is again building a platform and then giving other people opportunities to speak up.
Yes.
Because for the things that we do, and I'm very certain, Gertrude, that you can understand this. It takes a lot on out of us. Like it's really tolling emotionally, mentally, physically. So by being sustainable as a leader, you also help preserve your energy, just so then you can invest in another project. You can
Yes.
invest further in the community. So take care of yourself. Yes, speak up, be assertive, but also know when to stay quiet, have a great time to chill and relax. Put it back into you so that you can keep on doing more work.
Yeah.
And understand that, be it whether you're from a person of color community, you're from a multi-faith community, you're from LGBTIQA plus community, remember that every single person in those communities, they are also at another intersection. So make sure that when you do something, you think of the best strategy and solution that caters to everybody. I think that, yeah, those are my
Um,
advices for people.
that is fantastic. Well, I'll tell you, it's been an absolute honor and a pleasure having you on the show today. Thank you so much for sharing your story, your insights, your knowledge in this space. These conversations are necessary to bridge understanding between people. And I really commend you for your work. I think you deserve the award that you got. I know what it takes to put yourself out there, to advocate, to strive, to create a better planet than we found it. And I think because of your work, definitely you're making an impact. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Gertrude. Thank you, everybody.
And thank you to everybody who's tuned in today. The Diversity Connector is bringing you stories from all over the world, from people from all walks of life, to share our differences, to celebrate our differences as a strength and not a weakness, to inspire, to uplift, to motivate marginalized communities worldwide. So tune in again tomorrow when I interview yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. Bye for now, everybody. It's a wrap, everybody. on today's episode of the Diversity Connector podcast. Thank you for tuning in and being part of our vibrant and global conversation. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a tapestry of diverse perspectives. Remember, every story you've heard today is a thread in the larger fabric of our shared humanity. So, as you step back into your world, carry these stories with you and let them inspire you to embrace and celebrate the rich diversity around us. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these inspiring stories with more listeners. Do follow us on social media by looking for the Diversity Connector podcast for more updates. Until then, keep connecting, keep listening, and keep celebrating the beauty of diversity. This is the Diversity Connector podcast signing off. Stay curious, stay open, and definitely